Conversation that we had with the LGBTQ plus crusader Saurabh Kirpal, who has spoken about his 7-year wait for judgeship. Let's listen in.
We are joined by senior Supreme Court advocate and author Saurabh Kirpal, who will talk to us about his new book, Who is Equal, which is a comprehensive overview of the widely prevalent inequalities in India along the lines of caste, religion, gender and sexuality. Mr. Kirpal, congratulations. One more brilliant book. For the benefit of viewers of Times Now, can you please explain what your book is on? What is the deep dive about?
Yeah, thank you. Well, one is that the title is fairly clear. It's titled Who is Equal, because I think we all know the answer to that there are multiple inequalities in our country. We mentioned 4 areas where there are inequalities, which is gender, sexuality, caste and religion. And my aim is, rather than just commenting on the position of inequality, to try to explain to the viewer what the law and facts around inequality are. So, for instance, you can have formal legal equality, but in practice, in real life, when judges go to decide, there is inequality. So, for instance, when you say, take the case of gender, for instance, there is formal equality in most spheres. But when you try to apply a law evenly to a man and a woman whose position in life is very different, the outcomes will be unfair and unequal themselves. So the aim is to analyze not just the state of the law, but the state of the application of the law and the effect and impact it has on various facets of life. So education, employment, marriage, etc. These are all things that I have discussed in the book.
Now, talking about inequality, now an issue about which viewers are eagerly awaiting your stand. The 7-year wait for judgeship. All know that the first time the Delhi High Court Collegium recommended was in October 2017.
Correct.
After that, the Supreme Court Collegium endorsed that recommendation. 2023 January, it was reiterated. Now we are in August 2024, 7 years, and the reason cited by the government is your sexual orientation. You're openly, you're in fact that you are a gay, and the fact that your partner is a Swiss national, that can be grounds of national security. How do you view that? Have you, is your candidature still pending? Have you withdrawn, or you are still hopeful?
Well, I don't know if you saw this fantastic movie many years ago. My parents used to love it, called The 7-Year Itch. That after 7 years something happens and you try to withdraw. Fortunately for me, that has not happened. It's been 7 years, and the reasons I agreed to accept and offer my candidature for judgeship haven't changed. The idea was I believed in public service. I believed in trying to be a role model, not just for the queer community, but for other young people of our society. I try to do good. All those reasons still exist. And if those reasons are not about me, then I see no reason to change. So my candidature is still very much where it was. It seems to be kind of stuck where it was, but I suppose that is the way things move. As regards hope, I suppose this is so far beyond my pay grade that this is not a decision that I can ever take, that hope and all is meaningless. I simply have to carry on doing what I am doing currently, with the belief that if it does happen one day, very good. If it doesn't, so be it. It's my responsibility as a senior counsel to argue matters, both to the clients and to the court. And that's what I will do for the time being. And of course, since I don't get to write judgments because I'm not on the bench, I write these books which allow me to reach out and educate people about what their rights are.
Do you feel let down by the center, especially the reasons cited by them, and of course the collegium has responded by point-wise. Do you feel let down by the government?
I don't feel let down. For one, as you said, the collegium has been very kind and explained as to why the two reasons offered by the collegium were not necessarily correct. And I also understand that an issue of sexuality is a process of trying to teach. Maybe it is an endeavor that one has to teach people within the government that just because you have a different sexual orientation doesn't mean that you are some kind of an evil person or unfit or unworthy. It is a facet of my personality the way multiple other people have multiple other facets of their personality. So it's a process of education. And I hope somewhere, somehow, I've managed to educate some people there within the government or outside that this is really not a good reason not to consider people.
Even during the judges appointment row hearing, the Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul has been repeating that due to the delay in the center deciding on recommendations of the collegium, many meritorious candidates are withdrawing their candidature. Is your case one of them, though you have not withdrawn?
Well, no. But you know, someone like Aditya Sondi, who had been recommended for appointment in the Bangalore High Court, the Karnataka High Court, he withdrew his candidature. I didn't because, as I said, I firmly believe becoming a judge is a great act of public service. And it is selfless service because it is really hard work to be a judge. So I have not withdrawn. But I can understand other people who may not have the same patience maybe as me, who want to have some finality to their lives, who want to move on. For them, I can understand it would be a deterrent, not only for the people who accept, who then subsequently withdraw. I think it's also a deterrent for people to accept in the first go. Because when the collegium asks you, are you willing to be or offer to have your candidature sent for consideration, people will say, well, if I have to wait 5 years, what will happen to my practice in that 5 years? So they may be reluctant. So there is some merit in expediting the process, one way or the other.
Have you ever, in fact, regretted about going public about your sexual orientation?
Of course not. I am proud, out and proud to be gay. It was not an easy decision for me, as it is not for any queer person to come out when they are gay, lesbian, trans, intersex, whatever the sexuality or gender orientation. But once you do, it's the most liberating experience because you are now dealing with your truth to the world and you're interacting with them without these curtains and facades. And I think our court has repeatedly said that sunlight is the best disinfectant, that there must be honesty, there must be openness. Well, it's therefore important for me also to talk to whoever I'm talking, that they must know who I am. I don't shout from the rooftop, but it's not something I hide either. So I'm never regretting the fact that I came out.
Mr. Kirpal, in fact, you are one of the petitioners in that same-sex marriage. Are you a bit upset, disappointed that despite the bench making several positive comments as far as the rights of LGBTQ is concerned, the judgment was very reversed, and in fact the Supreme Court refused to legalize same-sex marriage?
I wasn't a petitioner, I was a lawyer for some of the petitioners. You know, lawyers should rarely be petitioners themselves, I think. But yes, I was deeply, deeply disappointed with the verdict. It's a case of operation successful, patient dead. So you read through the entire judgment and there's a whole explanation of how there's a right to a relationship, how the LGBT community has been discriminated against historically, even currently. But when it comes to giving the actual relief of recognizing marriage equality, that's when the courts put their hands up and say, we don't have the authority and the power. And at that point, I asked myself that if you had the power and authority to ensure that committees like Vishakha committee comes in, which looks into sexual harassment, and you have the power to monitor criminal cases, ensure that the environment is not degraded, if all those facets of Article 21 and your right to life can be protected by the court, why not protect the most vulnerable community in society? The LGBT community is silent not only because it is minuscule, but it is because it is oppressed. That is why they need the assistance of the court. And I think it was incumbent on the court to have come up with some creative ideas as to how they could interpret the law. And they have done that in the past. The law is not static, it's dynamic. Constitutional interpretation moves and allows courts to give relief where it is required. So I think this was one of the cases where the courts let down the community by not exercising the full power, which I believe they have.
In fact, next question is, has the LGBTQ community in fact benefited from the Navtej Johar judgment decriminalizing homosexual acts?
I think there has been a revolution that has happened since 2018. In the last 6 years, a whole generation of young people have come out not knowing what it was to live under the yoke of Section 377. The discussion because of the kind of judgment that 2018 Navtej Johar gave in the media, in public spaces, is far more inclusive than it used to be. When I was growing up, you only referred to a gay man by giggling or laughing and saying, ha ha ha, look how effeminate that person is. And you were a subject of ridicule. Now that is not the case. And I believe it is no small part because of this magnificent judgment in Navtej Singh Johar, because the moral authority of the Supreme Court also came into play. Because the citizens of this country were told that, look, the Constitution protects the LGBT community and the Supreme Court is standing firmly behind them. So I think that has caused a revolution, and people can now live openly without fear of going to jail. It's as simple as that, and they can form associations, they can, there's so many rights that flow.
What is your view on demand for criminalization of marital rape? Petitions are pending in the Supreme Court.
Yes. I am a firm believer that marital rape must be a crime. Well, rape is a crime. Marital rape is the exception. And there may be some worries at some point in certain quarters that if you criminalize marital rape, then there will be abuse, etc. But I think that is something that can easily be sorted out. Judges have training to understand and decide when an accusation is right and when an accusation is wrong. That happens not just in marital rape, that happens in all other kinds of rape or other kinds of offenses. You will have, of course, the presumption of innocence. So the main male section of society need not be worried that they will be falsely accused by their wives. And I dare say that think of the consequence of a woman who has been raped by her husband. Just because you're worried about the possibility of abuse, you can't undo or can't overlook the psychological trauma a wife faces. First, she may be harassed for dowry, then intimidated by the family, and then on top of that, sexually abused and molested by the one person she thinks is going to take care of her. I don't think that can be allowed to stand anyhow. So I hope at some point, even if the court doesn't do something about it, it's there in the courts move at their own pace. But there's no reason for Parliament not to come and undo this exception. Other countries don't have it. This argument that it will cause a death knell of all relationships. Well, there was a marital rape exception in the UK. They did away with it. That society is not fallen apart. It's the same thing with marriage equality. When people say, oh, look, marriage equality will happen, and what will happen to society? Look around you in the West. Things are perfectly all right. So these are arguments of status quo which come from people who don't want reform.
And coming to crimes against women, has anything changed with 12 years after Nirbhaya rape and murder? Criminal law amendments were brought in to bring harsher punishment, and now this. What is your view on this RG Kar hospital incident, Kolkata hospital horror?
Laws don't change people's behavior. This idea that if we enact a law and somehow suddenly rapes will stop, that can't happen. There's a death penalty for murder. It can't get more serious than that. Yet, it's not as the murders have not stopped. What you need is effective enforcement of the law, no matter how stringent or that it may be. That doesn't happen in our country. What we need is a culture where women can report crimes that have happened against them so that they can become in public consciousness. What you need is a tough task of educating young boys in school as how to respect women. I think while this rape in RG Kar was horrific, and when you read the details of it, it overwhelms anybody, as it would, because it shakes your faith in humanity. A lot of the outrage that is coming out is not only because of what happened to that unfortunate victim, that woman, but it is an outpouring of all the women who suffer not necessarily acts of rape every day, but the daily acts of inequality, the daily acts of molestation, the daily acts of being looked at in a way which you don't want to. That is symptomatic of the kind of society we are. Rape here is a symbol of what has happened, but the problem is the daily lives of women are fraught. They get discriminated against at work, when they're using public transport to go to work. All these forms of discrimination well up. Maybe every 10 years, 12 years, there are these demonstrations that will happen, law will be changed. But I don't think any government ever has taken the serious task of ensuring that a curriculum be included in the lowest, from the lowest classes, which teach respect to men as to how to respect women. It's not about seeing the woman as a mother goddess and Devi Ma and respecting her. Men have to start seeing women as an equal and another human being who's entitled to work and live her life. That's the kind of education that you need to change. Not this deification of a woman into either a goddess or a mother or something else, but just to see them as a person who's entitled to live, and also then a rapid consequence for a breach of any law. Of course, in Nirbhaya, we saw a very quick move up and trial and the death penalty for the assailants and the criminals. But that is not the norm. These cases linger on for decades. And when that happens, the faith in the criminal justice system gets shaken, and the efficacy of the criminal justice system also gets shaken. A law is pointless when it is not enforced. What is the point of enacting it and leaving it on the statute book? You need to actually let the person who is perpetrating a crime think, yes, there is a very real possibility that I will be caught and I will be prosecuted. As of now, people don't think so. Maybe not rape, but every other crime against women. That's the...
Okay. Mr. Kirpal, thank you so much for speaking to Times Now.
Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I am the future that was born 100 years ago. I am the purpose that emerged with India's independence, to be a force for business that makes doing good our business, towards an independence where knowledge sets us free, to think big and achieve bigger, towards a future made perfect, and be a force creating abundance. Because independence is not a moment in history, it's a never-ending path to prosperity. Aditya Birla Group, a force for good.